series, Entrepreneurship Zero to Hero. So I'm Anubhav, the Events and Administration Executive here at Student Incubation Cell of IIT Delhi. And with us in the very first lecture of this series is none other than Mr. Taranpreet Singh, who is the current CEO of Shark Ventures and Sleep Labs, which is incubated by the Student Incubation Cell of IIT Kanpur. He was mentioned in 30 Under 30, has worked with IIM Indore, and also has been a keynote speaker at United Nations ESCAP in Bangkok, Peking University in Beijing, Kazan OIC Forum in Russia, and Asian Development Bank in Manila. He is an alumni of NSIT Delhi. Today, it will be a great opportunity for all the entrepreneurship enthusiasts of IIT Delhi to get to interact with him and get enlightened by his teamed knowledge. With this, I'd like to hand over the stage to Mr. Taranpreet Singh.
Hi guys, thank you so much for this generous introduction, right? And thank you so much for the generous introduction, guys. And so let me just give a brief of about myself, and then maybe we go on to jump about to talk about more about entrepreneurship, right? And in these next couple of slides, my idea is to help you with what are the key pointers, what are the learnings, to go from 0 to 1. And when I say 0 to 1, it's like 0 to 1 CR, right? uh, and all those learnings that I had in my journey, right, of like last 7 8 years, right, in this international startup ecosystem, right. I'm pretty sure that most of the audience here, as mentioned to me, are like first year students, mostly students, maybe starting up in their entrepreneurial careers, right? And this whole presentation, this whole speaker session has been very customized according to that particular audience, so that I can touch the basics, the fundamentals of entrepreneurship, right? And then talk the relevant stuff which may be valuable to you, right? Also, I share the WhatsApp group links with all of you guys, right? And I'll be asking two questions, and the one who answers those two questions rightly in the shortest amount of time, right, will be getting Amazon vouchers worth 500 rupees each. I'll be asking two questions, right? So what you could do is you could join those WhatsApp groups, right? And you just have to type your answers over there in the WhatsApp groups, right? uh, so let me just give a brief about myself. uh, as mentioned as mentioned by Rohit, being earlier associated and speaking at different organizations across the world like UN Bangkok, Asian Development Bank, was associated with Microsoft in the investment team, featured in a lot of media houses across the world, in India, including India Today, the Hindu Business Line. So these are some of the social images what I've been doing. Had a chance to represent India at UN and then speak at all these different forums in the world. Right, was also on a TV show in Russia. Right, something you see like in India like Shark Tank. It was an idea Kroruka over there, and ADB itself as well. Was also featured in 30 Under 30. Yeah, so let me just talk about why people pursue entrepreneurship, right? Let me just give a brief of why people jump into entrepreneurship, right? Uh, of all the network of entrepreneurs I have, and the people and the experiences I had traveling across the world, right? There's like three or four main reasons why people go into or jump into entrepreneurship, right? The first is the freedom. They hate their jobs, their bosses, and maybe what they're doing, right? The second is the wealth creation, right, where they've hit the ceiling uh, with their income, with their salaries, right, with maybe their whatever types of incomes, and they want to jump into entrepreneurship, right? The third could be to follow their passion, their vision, create and innovate. And the fourth could be, where they've burned their bridges, and they have no other option to do anything else, right? So I'll just give you an example. Freedom. So most of you, maybe 2 or 3 years into the corporates, or 4% corporates, right? You'll be facing this kind of an issue where you'll be struggling with freedom. You maybe you may have hit the ceiling with your income, right? You may be at 40, 50 lakhs per annum. You may be at a crore a annum, right? But then the whole freedom to innovate, and you would be thinking of that passion, that what should I do to make a dent in the universe, right? And that is why you would jump into entrepreneurship, right? If you would ever jump into entrepreneurship, right? And then you obviously, when I say you burn the bridges, this is more relevant to, let's say, the guys who've not who've dropped out, or who've from their jobs or from education. But if you're completing your education, if you're completing your, if you've not burned your bridges, then that's also another option, right? So there are multiple ways and why people go into entrepreneurship, right? And you would feel, couple of years down the lane, whenever you jump into this would be one of the reasons, when you jump into that whole field of entrepreneurship, right? Now the second very important thing is, most of you in your first years, you'll ask that what is your passion, right? uh, you cleared the JE, right? Congratulations for the same, right? But obviously, if you if you look at, the professors, if you look at the businessmen, right? Everybody is doing something or the other, right? Some of them are very doing something research, right? While the businessmen are more about the profits, right? Some of the engineers turned into comedians, right? Some of the other engineers maybe turned into investment professionals, right? So it's why do they do it? And do you think, or should you curse that they've turned comedians after pursuing like 4 years of engineering, right? I think really no, because everybody is doing their best, is trying to make the best from whatever resources they had, right? And let's talk about the skills. Look inside you. If I talk about myself, I've been doing public speaking for the last 10, 11, 12 years, right? Even during my school days, right? I was extremely good in extempore, right? Had Was a part of all the debating societies, right? And then had a chance to speak in more than like 10 countries, including all those big names, right? So I was really good at that. I was really good at the storytelling part, right? And it's very important to focus on your strengths. So nobody would come and tell you that, hey, this is you have to do. You have to look inside yourself, right? And the second is the hit and trial. Now people say that, I may be good at, let's say, coding. I may be good at the mechanical stuff or artificial intelligence, or let's say the non-technical part. And then I'll say, you should be vulnerable. You should expose yourself. The university days are more about trying different things. You have all those societies and clubs and different kinds of internships, right? And the most important thing is hit and trial, because uh, Taran is a unique Taran in the entire world. And if, let's say, you talk about any person, let's talk about Rohit. There's a unique Rohit, right? In the whole world. No, there's nobody been like Rohit. The circumstances he had been through, the culture he has been through, the resources and the skill set he has been through. So everything is inwards and not outwards, right? And the third is increase your top of the funnel. What I mean by top of the funnel is explore as much as you can, right? I went to UN when I was in my second year of the university, right? I didn't have, those resources. I crowdfunded, right? Within 4 hours, I crowdfunded like a sum of INR 1 lakh, right? And, when you are passionate, people bet on you, right? It's just that we sometimes we don't have that courage and motivation to go out and say that, hey, this is what I can do. You have to have that confidence in yourself, right? And the fourth thing is the consistency over hard work. What I really believe is, leaders are not born, but leaders are made, right? And you have, there could be some exceptional cases, in whatever I'm saying, it's very subjective to cases, to situations, right? But mostly how I have seen world is the experiences are engraved in you, right? It's like an artificial intelligence engine. Your brain is like an algorithm where you keep on putting data. Unless and until you keep on learning the good things, this algorithm or this brain will, talk shit or will do shit, right? You have to keep learning from those experiences and keep on working over it. That is how you improve. That's how AI works as well, right? In your language, right? Uh, let's talk about the different business models, right? Uh, Now you would say that, hey, okay, I've jumped into entrepreneurship, right? I've figured out my passion. Now, what do I do, right? I won't go into complicated stuff like B2B to C or something like that. No, let's keep it simple. There are like two ways you sell your products or services. One is the B2C and the second is the B2B. B2C is you sell to the consumers and the B2B is you sell to the businesses, right? Now there could be different examples of, a company could be B2C and a company could be B2B as well, right? And a company which is dealing in B2C, I'll just give you an example. A Mama Earth, which is into products, or the L'Oreal, or all these different personal care are the B2C companies, right? And let's say you started a agency business, you providing marketing services to a different organization or a business. That's a B2B because you're selling to a business. There are a lot of softwares, right? You have Microsoft Teams, you're selling to an organization. They sold it to IIT or they sold it to a different corporate to be used by the business, and hence it's a B2B model, right? uh, if you look at from a venture capital perspective, the B2C companies have, in these days, at in 2021, when we're recording this session, when we're doing. Now, here's a question for you guys, right? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Got it.
Yes, sir.
So here's a question for you guys. The first question, which will win you a Amazon gift voucher, right? Now, in the WhatsApp group, you have to type, and the one who writes the answer, the correct answer, the fastest gets the Amazon voucher, right? So the question is, are you
Which
ready,
WhatsApp
guys?
group you have to write? On which WhatsApp group, sir?
Just on the WhatsApp group, you can write the answers to this question, right? And the
So
fastest
which
correct.
WhatsApp group?
Which WhatsApp?
So which WhatsApp group?
Okay, so you have these WhatsApp groups, these two WhatsApp groups.
I will try it later.
Got it, got it. So the question is, you know, uh, you recently saw about the two different business models, the B2B and the B2C. The one who answers this question gets a 500 rupees Amazon gift voucher, right? Uh, Google generates the maximum revenue from which of these business models? You just have to write it over there on the WhatsApp, right? And that's all.
Please show the slide.
Got it. So let's move to the next thing, right? And if please someone, if please you can mute yourself, right, so that I can proceed. Got it. So let's talk about the distribution channels, right? Now the different ways, you've created a product, right? The product could be, a laptop, a product could be a mobile phone, the product could be, a mouse, a product could be anything, right? You created a mobile application or anything, but then you have to have those distribution channels to sell your product, right? Now, what are the ways? There are different distribution channels. Like I mentioned, there could be offline supply chain, online Amazon, direct sales, manufacturers and consumers, and there could be export of services as well, right? Where you could export your services, right? Traditionally and very conventionally, the offline supply chain was something where the manufacturers used to supply to the end consumer, whereas when it comes to the online world, you had all the ways to supply to the direct to the end consumer. Amazon and Flipkart, provide you a marketplace with all those things like lead generation and a platform to sell, where they take care of all the logistics, etc., right? And then you also have these options of direct sales, right? uh, let's move to the next important part. What is success for you, right? Is it $1 billion valuation? And how do you achieve that? Now, it's very subjective questions. A lot of my friends, are very ambitious, right? Now, some of them could be chasing $5 million in cash. Some of maybe chasing $10 million in cash, $50 million in cash, or maybe $1 billion in valuation, right? Now, these are completely different things, right? So when you talk about the valuation, you talk about, somebody valuing your company. That could be on the basis of your intellectual property. That could be basis on the user base, or your revenue projections, right? And mostly VC funded companies, and it takes around 5 to 10 years to reach that kind of valuation. In the US, however, or other parts of the world, you see there's shorter cycles of this valuation, right? But then when you compare and when you ask, would you be more satisfied with $50 million in cash or like $1 billion valuation? Again, that's a very subjective question, because when you talk about the valuation, that's an illiquid thing. It's usually on the paper, unless and until you sell your company to someone else, right? And then $50 million in cash, right? Yeah, and that's again achieved through a very highly scalable business model, which takes, if you're doing it without the VC funding, it takes around usually 10 to 20 years with no VC funding, right? Again, that's, if you just want to have a $10 million in cash business, business models with small market sizes may or may not be with the VC funding, right? So it's very subjective, and it completely depends upon you. What are you looking at and what is the success for you? And if you look at $5 million in cash, that is something you'll even achieve with your jobs, when you do for like 10 years or 20 years, or and you are good in finance, and you do not invest more in liabilities and focus more on assets. Any questions here? So if you have any questions, just put down on the WhatsApp group, right? And I'll be answering those questions, once this session is over, right? Uh, let's talk about, how to become a unicorn. It's a matter of, and why venture capitalists fund what they fund, right? The simple logic here is, there are three parameters here: the expenses, and this is the revenue, and this is the valuation, right? So you need to have linear expenses and exponential revenues. That is how, your business would be more, scalable, and that is how you can have an exponential growth over the time, right? And that is where the VCs come in, right? You could look at different examples, right? Where the expenses were linear. Look at the example of WhatsApp, right? Just with couple of guys with no fixed expenses, right? They were able to scale it to a billion users, right? And they sold the company to, to Facebook, right? They built a scalable, repeatable business, and with distribution, there was some compounding, there was network effects, and the whole business was able to fly really, really well, right? Even though they didn't have a revenue model, but the whole amount of users they had carried a certain value, and hence, back in like 2015, 16, when the WhatsApp was sold, right? It was sold for like over 10 or $15 billion, right? And hence, the whole idea, if you are looking to create a unicorn, if you're looking to create $1 billion in valuation, right, you should be looking at how you can achieve that exponential revenue with linear expenses, right? And with this business model. I'm not saying that you cannot. Again, there are certain exceptions which can always be the case, because the whole valuation game is a very subjective game. It's a demand and supply, right? But then this is mostly how the businesses achieve this $1 billion valuation. Now the next question is, what affects valuation, right? Now when you're starting really, really early, right? What are the resources do you have, right? Now this could be, let's say, a credible team, a very strong and credible team. That is what you can have. Now, when you look at, uh, from the business point of view, you need to have all the skill sets. You need to have someone who takes ownership of selling the product, someone who takes ownership of creating the product, right? Someone who takes ownership of, let's say, keeping the money in the bank account, right? Getting the money in the bank account, right? So these are some of the complementary skill sets that you may need to look at. Then obviously, when you look at larger organizations, they have CFOs, they have CTOs, they have chief operation officer, the chief business officer, the revenue officer. But then when you are at very, very early stages, you are like two or three guys who are doing the heavy lifting, and hence those two or three guys should be very passionate, should have those complementary skill set, right? The second is, the very large market size, right? It is very important to have a very large market size, because that is the only thing that you cannot change. You can change and pivot the product, you can change the team, and it should be the right time and should be a very large market, right? That could be, if you talk about, let's say, the Flipkart or Amazon. E-commerce is a very huge market, which was earlier, offline, right? And hence Flipkart disrupted that, Amazon disrupted that, right? And you look at any of those examples, right? Let's talk about the Mamaearth or any pharma. So they're disrupting with the business models or with the products, right? And other thing that affects is that the product having a leverage with brand or intellectual property or distribution channel or a business model. Now, when you talk about brand, Mamaearth is a good example. If you look at from an Indian standpoint, Boat is a good example, is a great example. If you look at the intellectual property, right, there are a lot of robotics companies. There are a lot of, Apple is a great example, right? You need to have those trademarks, those patents, those copyrights, right? If you look at the distribution channels, then again I'll say the D2C, or let's say the Thrasio model. All of these are you know have a great example of the distribution channel where it disrupted the distribution channel through direct to consumer. It's not that easy to scale when you sell directly to the consumer, because if you're selling like 1,000 rupees thing to let's say millions of users, that's how you build up those kind of revenues, right? That is why earlier offline, you know uh, uh, they used to go through that conventional supply chain where they were selling to distributors, right? Only one distributor would take a crore or 2 crore or 3 crore of order at the same in a single go, right? And hence uh, uh, the manufacturers used to clear those inventories with that, right? And the most important thing is the potential to scale rapidly with incremental expenses and exponential revenues. That was the more important thing. That's what I mentioned before. If you have any questions, please put down on the WhatsApp.
Sir,
Am I audible?
I'd like to take a question on the behalf of on behalf of Sanvi Jain.
Sure.
She asked that how to manage multiple things along with academics, as an entrepreneur is supposed to have basic knowledge of all the areas.
Got it. So, the best way is, I'll come to that. I have created a couple of slides just from a student standpoint as well. But then, you cannot be the master of all the different trades, right? You need to have a good team, right? That is why we have good teams. Look at all the successful unicorns, or look at all the, not just unicorns, right? There are a lot of different businesses in India, right? Where they're not affected by valuations, but they're having 100 or 200 million dollars valuations, revenues. You have to look at that. You need a strong team. You need to get a team which is equally passionate, should have those work ethics, right? They have complementary skill set. If you are into soft skills, if you're into non-technical part of the things, or in selling part of the things, right? The other guy should be into the technical or building the product, right? And then, when it comes to academics, right, I'll say that, it depends upon your priorities. It depends upon, you have, if you're building, let's say you can take out an hour or two where, you have certain milestones. You have those milestones and goals. You write it down and you chase those milestones, and you dedicate those number of hours for these milestones and for to achieve those kind of goals, right? So to answer your question, I'll say have a right team, right? And when you're passionate about something, I'll say you mostly take out time. Human body has a lot of potential to work 16 hours a day, 15 hours a day, and you'll get that time. You'll take out that time from all those different things. Say 15, 20 minutes from something, and then others, right? So that is my perspective of how I look at things.
So Akansh wants to ask that once you have an idea for some startup, how to build a strong team.
Got it. So, there again, this whole question has a lot of different answers, right? Now, there are different cases where, the friends, if you've known someone, you've trusted someone, right? And uh, and then you partnered with that particular guy and you built a team, right? But obviously that guy should have those complementary skill set. The other way to look at this is, you try to build high level understanding of multiple domains, you gain some traction, and then you go into the market and you get the experts in the domain, like 10 years of experience or 15 years of experience. Now you'll ask me that why would they come, to you? But then perspective and how I have built teams and how I've seen other people build teams is, you do the hustle for like 1 year, right? Build a product, build some intellectual property, build, get some associations with an, incubators with some governments, and get some customers, right? And then go and find even a 20 years guy who's into a corporate, right? Who's been doing, let's say, the distribution part of the things, right? Would love to associate with you because even he wants to change and wants to be an entrepreneur. It's just that you realized this entrepreneurship earlier, and you see 50-year-old guys, starting up, and so that's on both of the sides, right? So the interest is in both the sides. You just have to find the right people over the time, and it should not be in a hurry. It should be very patient. You need to have someone who you find rhythm with, have those work ethics. That is very, very important. Have those legal agreements in place when you find those co-founders. Don't underestimate the power of legal agreements, right? And don't underestimate the complementary skill sets. You cannot just have your chuddy buddy friend or a childhood friend, have your co-founder. It shouldn't be the case, but with someone with a complementary skill set, because when you scale, that is where people break down, right? He should have some intellect, not just IQ but EQ as well, right?
So Dipanshu wants to ask that what if a person is passionate about entrepreneurship and wants to build a startup but doesn't have a good idea? So how should he deal with this situation?
See, when it now look at most of the successful entrepreneurs, right? I'll also answer that question, in the next couple of slides, right? So let me just complete that, and I'll take this question. This is an interesting question, and I'll take that question. Yeah.
Sure, sir, sure.
Correct. Got it. So now, if you're going out, let's say some of you might have had a idea, and you had some traction with your whole pitch, startup, right? And now you want to prepare a pitch deck. Then again, there's certain things, you need to have that in the pitch. And what is a pitch? Pitch deck is a summary of your business, right? Which you share to the investors, to your incubators, to your accelerators, right? It has problem statement, it has solution, it has what you're trying to solve, what is the solution to that problem, what is the market size of that particular problem statement, right? And then the other thing is, what is the product, why is it scalable, why is it defensible, why is it different from the rest, right? What is the traction, or what is the progress that you have made with that particular idea, right? uh, the testimonials of your clients, right? The validation, the best validation is your paid clients, right? It's not your investors, it's not your parents, it's not your your sister, mother, friends, etc. It's your paid clients. That's your validation. And then you have to understand how you're different from the competitors, right? How strong the team is, right? What are the financials, what's the gross margins, what are the margins, right? What is the funding that you looking to raise, and how do you want to deploy this, right? So that it has a lot of nitty gritties, but I told you a high level understanding of what needs to be covered in the pitch deck when you're going to raise funds, right? Okay, so the next important thing is, don't underestimate this when you're starting up, right? The first and the very important thing is the legal documents like co-founders agreement, a GST, company incorporation, or compliances, right? Now, most of you are coming from tech backgrounds, right? You may not come up with someone telling you that, hey, you should go into a co-founder agreement, or the best, or over the last 18 years, 19 years of your existence, you would have trusted people. But in business, right, you don't, the best way I'll say is, go with a legal document, a proper document. You'll find those templates for co-founders agreement. You need to understand all those clauses, right? The other way is just spend 3,000, 4,000 on, on vakil search or a clear tax and get that co-founders agreement. The other thing is the GST. Usually in India, if you are looking to get a GST, if you've hit like 20 lakhs in annual revenues, you need to get a GST. That's a mandatory thing. But if you do not, have 20 lakhs in annual revenues, you can still get a GST. How it helps is, one, it brings some credibility to your business. Second, for everything that you purchase, there's some kind of a GST attached to that, and you can take that, input, GST input, that helps you. So that's like 18% of savings for you. And GST filing takes like the CA takes like 500, 1,000 rupees on a monthly basis, right? The company incorporation, when it comes to the company incorporation, I started with what my suggestion would be to start with the proprietorship. That doesn't require, you just file a GST and start your business. Once you hit 20 lakhs, once you're going to raise funds, then you go for a private limited. Some people say that you can go for a private limited as well. You can go for a LLP as well. So that's a different segment. I'll cover it. That's a very detailed segment. I'll cover it later. Compliances, there are a lot of compliances. Proprietorship has the least compliances. And why I'm saying you that you should go with a proprietorship or LLP. LLP is another form where you have limited liability, right? Because when you're building something for the next couple of months, you may not have those revenues, right? Not cash flows, right? How do you sustain and have those compliances? And I see most of the entrepreneurs leaving those compliances, and which it becomes difficult in the longer, in the later stages, right? The second is having a mentor coach on board. Even Team India has a coach for each of its departments, right? The India has bowling coach, a batting coach, and a head coach, right? So it's very important to have someone who have crossed your journey, right? And been there, right? The third thing is the buffer in savings, right? Now, this is something nobody tells you, right? And nobody even told me, people say, what is risk? And your parents would say that, hey, this entrepreneurship, dhanda karne mein, it's very risky, right? But what is that risk? It's a financial risk. If you have 1 year of your monthly expenses saved in FDs or any other financial instruments, right? That would mitigate your risk, right? And the next important thing is don't be infatuated by solving hard and complex problems. Solve easy problems first and build, cash flow assets. Now, entrepreneurship is not like solving Irodov or HC Verma that you did, or all of those complex JEE advanced that you did in preparing JEE, right? Obviously, so you have to go in stairs. Even Elon Musk did 2 or 3 different startups before sold those companies and then went to doing Tesla and SpaceX, right? So solve simple problems that generate cash flow assets and you'll have a better life there, right? Don't be infatuated by solving complex problems as tech guys are doing. Don't go into hardware. I suggest, that's my perspective. Don't go into core hardware. Don't go into something that has a lot of regulations. Don't go into automotive space initially with as a student, because you don't have that money. ICAT certification takes like 15-20 lakhs. All those registrations and everything takes a lot of money. There are a lot of regulation certifications, right? And nobody, it takes a lot of time to get those grants, even if you're getting from government, right? And hence I'll suggest go with software, digital products, and that is where I'm coming to next. So, okay, how do you build a buffer with $0, right? So I was at a stage in the first year, second year, where I had $0, right? I built some buffer, right? Different ways. One could be freelance, sell your skills. Now, one of the skills could be, you may start teaching or, get a buffer. If you have a buffer of like, let's say 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs in your bank account, you feel confident and then you can take a plunge into entrepreneurship, right? But then I suggest don't go without a buffer, right? The second is service businesses or agencies. This could be, if you're good in marketing, you could be provide marketing services to someone. The third could be resale, trade, digital or physical products. Now, again, this doesn't require any capital. If you're trading something, this could be trading your notes, you could trading your digital products like mobile applications, anything, right? It should be legit, right? And the fourth is jobs and other kind of engagements. That is again, you do jobs and then you save money, right? And that is again a way, how do you build buffers? Okay, so how do you hit the first $150,000, right? The first 1 crore is the very difficult because it has a lot of friction, right? It's very difficult to get 1 crore in in jobs, right? Even if you get, it is a mix of shares. It's a mix of in the basic and salaries and taxes, etc. It kind of trenches you, right? So how do you build it with the business? And businesses has a lot of benefits, right? High gross margins like high ticket consulting or software as a service, etc. That's one way to build your first 1 crore. uh, I built my first 6 figures, right, with just 5 clients, right? Very high ticket, but then I had a lot of hard work before that. I traveled across the world and did a lot of consulting, was consulting CEOs of large companies, right, and so on and so forth, right? But then when I started into consulting, very high ticket consulting, I did with just 5 clients in a couple of months, right? And then you have your own ways, right? build IP and license your technology to businesses. Now, the if you look at the story of SoftBank CEO, the founder, right? What he did back in US when he was a student, he built something, and he sold his invention to someone for like $1 million. That was a lot of money back then, right? The other could be dropship on Amazon, Flipkart, etc. Right? What is dropshipping? Where you don't hold inventory, where you don't manufacture, but you are good in selling and you sell it on Amazon, Flipkart. Amazon dropshipping gives you like 10-15% profit after tax. Building IP and licensing your technology because your skill sets are involved, your brain is involved, your creativity is involved. You get 100% of profits, high gross margins like high ticket consulting. Again, you are at 95% gross margins or profits, right? If you are at low ticket business, let's say you're selling digital products like a mobile application, etc., you are it could be a low ticket, right? Then you have to increase the number of clients. I'll go to LTV CAC in a later series, right? So what is the rule of thumb to scale? I hope I'm audible. Just making sure that.
Yes, sir,
Yes,
you
sir,
are.
you are audible.
Got it. So what is the rule of thumb to, let's say, scale $150,000 or $1 million or $100 million, right? The fundamentals of business in any category in any country are the same, right? If you are selling a low ticket product, what I mean by low ticket product is a sasta product, right? You have to sell it at a scale. You need more number of clients, right? And if you start interacting with all those clients, you would never be able to make it a $100 million or a $1 million or $150,000 business, because it's very operationally heavy and you cannot be everywhere. You cannot have, when there are humans involved, there are lot of chances of human mistakes, right? And hence I'll say, when it's a very low ticket size, it has to sell through inside sales, through automatically, through ads or something like that, right? If you're selling, like, here's this whole table. If you're selling like a 10 cents product, you have to sell, like, it could be an API call per user. You have to have 1 billion calls to hit $100 million. If it's $100 product, you have to have 1 million customers for that, right? If you're selling high ticket $10 to $20,000 product, right? That could be consulting, that could be anything. That's again a mix of, there would be some human intervention involved. If you're selling in India, it's very difficult to sell a $10,000, $20,000 product without human intervention. You nowadays you can think of buying a car online, but then if you know about the brand and the product before, but then earlier, if you buying a 7 lakhs, even a 15 lakh or even a 40, 50 lakhs car, right? You would go there, test drive. There are a lot of humans involved in the whole process, and that's how it sells, right? And if you're, let's say, purchasing $100,000, look at from your perspective, right? You're buying a house of, let's say, 75 lakhs, right? Then direct sales, where you interact with the people, and because it makes sense, right? And you need just 1,000 customers to hit $100 million, right? So this is a table you have to follow. If you are selling less than $10,000, and if you have a lot of human intervention involved, you are in a dead zone. And I've seen a lot of companies which are falling into the dead zone and being dead pulled, right? Last couple of slides, how to raise capital. These are last two slides. So one of the ways to raise capital is the 3 Fs, which is the friends, family, and fools, right? There are different ways. I built my consulting, and then took money and put into a product business, right? I put in my own capital, right? Didn't borrow from friends, family, and fools, right? Then there's angel investors. You have all those successful entrepreneurs, your Illuminize, etc., who can pour in money. But then some, it's very important that it's a very small community of venture capitalists and angel investors and entrepreneurs in the world, right? You shouldn't mess up, or shouldn't fuck up with that whole community. You should be very professional with that. If you do not have the cordial relationships, right? uh, then it's not like you can mess up with someone and it doesn't reach the guy in Bangalore doesn't know about it. It's a very small community, believe me that, right? I have met people. I met a guy from Tunisia in Russia, and then I met the same guy in Beijing and Peking University, right? So it's a very small community, believe that, and have those cordial relationships. The other is incubators, accelerators, micro VCs, and grants. There are a lot of incubators like the one you have in your university as well. Then there are accelerators, right? the micro VCs are small micro venture capitalists, right? And then grants, right? Of the government. Grants are mostly for intellectual property driven companies. And you see a lot of grants for startups as well these days, for normal startups as well. And then institutional VCs come when you raise, when you have some traction, right? It's not that, you are sitting at, let's say, 10 lakhs of revenue and then Sequoia would come in. Not possible unless and until you have a lot of intellectual property or you are like a lot of credibility, right? So they come at a stage when you have built some traction. That is their thesis, right? And that is how they come in, right? So learnings, that's the last slide. Uh, when you have the first paycheck, don't buy liabilities. Don't go for buying a expensive car. Instead, build a savings pool or a buffer after your first paycheck. That really helps, right? And do it for your dry day, right? And even if you have the most urge, right? I know most of the people are coming from small towns, at IITs and even at NSITs and all those you know different institutions, the prestigious institutions across the country. But then we have to hold your horses and save that for your savings, right? Build cash flow assets. Now physical assets are very capital intensive, right? I'll just give you an example. If you buy a 1 crore house, and you rent it, you get like 20,000 per month or 30,000 per month. Now you can build those similar digital assets, right? Build a YouTube channel, an Instagram channel, or build a mobile application. You get 10, 20,000 or 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, all those kind of revenues, right? Even I've seen people getting 20, 50 lakhs, 1 crores, 2 crores. So that's all possible, right? That's the power of technology. And that's the leverage, that's the pedigree that you have. And that is what you can do, right? And the third thing is, don't fall into this pit of, let's say, $1 billion valuation. Aim for the first $1,000. Once you get that first $1,000, then aim for the $10,000 and then $150,000. Even though the ways may not be scalable, right? Doesn't matter, right? Uh, doesn't matter. Your first business may or may not be a unicorn. Your second business can be, but your second business, you know you have a chance of survival. You have a chance to win if you survive. You don't have a chance to win if you don't survive, right? So the most important thing is survival, right? In the initial days, unless and until you have a brand in the market, and so on and so forth, right? The next important thing is, have legal agreements in place, even though your co-founder is your best friend, even though your co-founder is your cousin brother, even though I've seen a lot of different cases. Out of the 15 companies failing, 10 of them fail because they don't have those legal agreements with their friend. Spend like 2-3 thousand on those lawyers, on those services. It's better to spend that rather than wasting your 1 year, 2 year, 3 year and lakhs of rupees, right? Have mentors, coaches on board. Be vulnerable to them, and that is how you learn, right? It is very important to have those mentors. I had a whole lot of mentors in my life, right, who shaped me, who I am, right, gave me direction, right? And everybody needs that mentor, right? And I think it's very, very important to have those kind of mentors as well, right? Who you can talk to, who are like your friends. And sometimes it's said, that mentors choose you. You don't choose mentors, right? It's very rightly said, because even though uh, they need to have skin in the game, right? They need to make the best out of you, right? So that's something, my learnings, right? And another thing which is not mentioned here is, don't build capital intensive businesses. The first business should not be a capital intensive business unless and until your father is a millionaire, right? Or you have $1 million sitting in your parents bank accounts or your bank account, right? So don't build hardwares. I'll suggest that initially. I'm not criticizing that hardwares are not good. I'm saying it's very capital intensive. It takes a lot of time to build that. Build softwares. It's easy. It's build cash flows, sell, and then you can resell first, and then see if there's a demand. Then you can build your own product, right? The customer is the king. The paid customer is a validation, right? And nothing else matters, right, at the end of the day, right? And your success is very subjective. You don't compete with others. And remember just one thing: you're in the first year. Your classmates are not your competitors. They are your network, and your network is your net worth. All of you guys, I'm pretty sure 5 years, 10 years down the lane, and 20 years down the lane, you will be in a C-suite positions in some of the companies, maybe managers, maybe senior managers, vice presidents, CEOs, etc., right? Don't burn your network. you should be very cordial to them and be best to them, right? If you have any questions, you can again write to this group, right? And that is something, you can ask those questions. If you can DM me separately if you have any questions as well. You can schedule office hours. There's a link in the WhatsApp group, but those hours are limited. If you don't appear for those office hours, those are free, right? But uh, please, you don't have that authority to schedule again. So respect the time, respect my time, respect your time as well. Happy to answer any questions that you have now.
So I'd like to repeat the question that I asked a few minutes ago by
So
Dipanshu. What if I don't have a good idea, but I'm passionate about entrepreneurship and want to build a startup? Then how to deal with it?
got it. So, see, the perspective is, see, why do you jump into entrepreneurship? I told you, right? Either you are into wealth creation, or I'll just go back to slide number one, right? Which is very important, right? So you can reverse engineer the whole thing, right? Now, if you want to jump into entrepreneurship, I think there could be these are 3 or 4 reasons, you know, why you're doing it, right? Uh, the freedom, the wealth creation to follow the passion, and you might have burnt your bridges, right? Some people are also very conscious about the social impact they're looking to create, right? The NGOs and stuff, right? So that is very important. What gives you satisfaction, right? And that is where you get the idea from, right? And you look at, just around you, right? If you're just here to create money, follow the thing I told you, build digital products, maybe go into drop shipping, start building those freelancing, make service based businesses, right? Have those cash flow assets, and then over the time you'll have those hit and trials, and you'll get the idea what you're looking for. If you're just for wealth creation, then doesn't really matter to you what is the other things, right? If you have a passion, if you have some kind of a vision, I've seen people, some of my friends are like multi-millionaires, and they're like, their fathers are multi-millionaires, and they started building on top of it, right? They still do all the hard work, and the reason is because they have some kind of a passion to do it, right? So there's no, that is how I would approach the situation if I were you, right? I hope it answers your question. Open to other questions.
Huh. So Ayush wants to ask that how to get an initial funding if they are from the very first entrepreneur. They are if they are the very first entrepreneurs in their family and they do have to convince their family members as well. Then how to get a monetary funding in that case?
Okay, so one of the things, one of the things I told you in the last couple of slides is, uh, where you do not require that initial funding, right? I know the funding is a crunch at initial stages, right? But then one of the ways is you build a pool of capital with, let's say, freelancing. You might have some skill sets if you've reached till IIT Delhi, right? You may be good in public speaking or in coding, or you may be good in physics, chemistry, or mathematics. You teach students or whatever you want to do. Build that cash flow assets, and then you use that funding, build a cash pool or a savings pool for like 1 year, and then you use that funding to build a long term vision uh, for yourself. The other could be, now this is the best way, because you don't have any obligations towards anyone when you're using those funds, because that's your funds, right? That's your thing. Now if you borrow it, there are different ways to, apart from this, one of the ways is, let's say, you can go for debt loans from banks, but then you need some kind of collaterals. The second is you can go for grants if you have intellectual property, right? If you have some kind of patents, right? Then I'll suggest is, you build on that, right? And there are a lot of government schemes, right? What I can do is, you can I can share those schemes as well. There's like Nidhi Prayas, right? That is what you can do, right? And then there is Startup India Seed Fund. All these schemes give you 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 50 lakhs of money, right? That is another way to look at things. There are these accelerator programs or incubators, like, in India, there's like GSF Accelerator. In US, there's Y Combinator. Then there's Techstars, right? IITs also have their own incubators, right? IIMs have their incubators. That is another way. The another thing is, where you have the three F's: the friends, families, and fools, right? To invest in you, right? These could be your if you build. But the most important thing is you need to create something. You Ideas are a commodity, and execution is everything. You need execution on at least one front. Either you build a product so that you can have money to build a distribution network, or you have a distribution network, then you think that, okay, let's build some kind of product, right? You need to at least have one side of things so that it makes the case stronger for you.
So Mihir wants to ask that how useful is it to pursue MBA after BTech to understand all the departments of a company?
Okay, so let me just share my perspective of my friends pursuing MBAs, right? I say that you are at IIT Delhi. What are the If you look at from an entrepreneurship point of view, what are the different ways you can harness the value from IIT Delhi? One of the things is the network, right? Like I told you, 20 years down the lane, mark my words, you know, uh, most of the guys around you, even sitting in this room, maybe at C-suite positions. Do you want to be competitors with them, or do you want to be network with them? And that is the same for when you're pursuing Masters of Business Administration, right? Over the time, you're still in the first year, in the second, third, fourth year, you'll realize that in engineering or in any department, the degrees don't hold value, the skills hold value. Your network holds value, your experience holds value, right? Ask from your seniors, right? What holds value? What did they study I'm not saying that uh, uh, you don't get any kind of value, but the point is the best value that you get is from the network, from an entrepreneurship point of view. The second is you building some technical knowledge. Keep on building that. When it comes to the MBA, you can go through this route. If you're going through to MBA, go for IIMs, shoot for the IIMs, go for the Harvard Business School. But for the Harvard Business School, you would have to have some kind of experience, 2 or 3 years. The other way is you can also pursue MS and PhD. MS and PhD, the PhDs are free in US, where they even give you stipend of like $2,000, $3,000 per month, right? That is another thing that you can pursue, and that it gives you some kind of leverage in terms of network and experience. That helps you out, yeah.
So Priyash says that he has seen many of the unicorn companies have founder who have already worked in some sort of MNCs for like 2 to 3 years before starting up their own company. So do you think that it is really necessary to work in the multinational companies before creating a startup?
See, I'll say that it helps. When you are into that ecosystem, when you are into, I've seen, a lot of. So one of the things that is very important to understand here is most of the entrepreneurs are self-learners. Entrepreneurship has nothing to do with the degrees that you're pursuing, like I told you, right? So they are self-learners. You start with one particular thing, maybe with a product, maybe with something, and then you build on top of it. And you cannot do it if you just completely rely on your, degree or jobs or anything like that, right? And then you have to have all those pieces of the puzzle. You have to build the right team. You have to. So my perspective would be it helps. I also did a job, right? I've been consulting CEOs of large companies before I consulted CEOs individually, right? I was a chief growth officer of $100 million pharma group, and then was associated with Mamaearth as well for some time. So it helps. It helps you understand how are they, structured. How does the team? How team is important? How do you build those kind of team and build those relations with the team? How do you assign those different hierarchies and everything? So it really helps. That's my perspective. But it's not mandatory to be in a corporate. I've seen entrepreneurs coming out of college and self-learned a lot of different things. But you need to have those mentors then. You need to have those right team.
So Gagi wants to ask that if a person has a concept or idea for the market and it is new, as a novel idea, then how to make other people persuade other people to accept that service and how to remove its vulnerabilities.
Got it. So let me put it this way. I said before, don't solve complex problems, right? Uh, I'm not saying that don't create new categories. You should create new categories. But the point is, when you create new categories or new verticals or something completely new, novel, right? Uh, it has high chances of failure because you need a lot of cost of acquisition to have that behavioral change of the consumer, for the consumer, right? And most of the times 97 or 98% of the startups fail, right? And the point is, initially you have to increase the probability of your success. My perspective would be, build some cash flow assets, build a buffer. That's the first thing. Second, build cash flow assets. That could be digital assets. Third, shoot for the long term vision, which is like building your, let's say, building a new category, building a new thing. When it comes to the convincing, I'll say that, your the customers are the validation. As technical guys, how what I have seen, most of the IITians, I have partners. I have one of my partners that's coming from IIM, and then one is coming from IIT. And what the problem I've seen is, you spend most of the time on building product, and then the important thing in business, in entrepreneurship, is you have to build, you have to seek feedback from the consumer, from the paid consumer, and then you have to again keep on iterating. That's a design thinking process, right? You have to follow. You just not have to completely focus on building.
So I would like to wrap up this event here, and I'd like to pay you heartfelt thanks for attending this event, for taking up your valuable time out for us and for the students of IIT Delhi. And for this event was majorly attended by the freshers, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of all of us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to share my experiences. Right. I hope all of you, do well in your careers. Maybe it's job, it's entrepreneurship. Nothing. Just a remark, that all of those experiences that have been shared are my personal experiences that I have felt, and I have seen myself, had those first-hand experiences. You know, and nothing is, the whole entrepreneurship world is very subjective, right? If a professor, or if someone tells you that, hey, this cannot be worked, this can obviously be worked unless and until you have some data with your opinion, right? So that shouldn't stop you from pursuing what you want to do. Have that courage to go further, right? Have that perseverance, to build. Have that patience, right? To for let it nurture, right? And things will work out. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the best, all of you, right? And may you shine like stars in the coming years. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Yeah,
Sir, just a last question before we end. Like,
sure.
what I have noticed in recent trends, that most big startups are coming way back from like 10 years and working hard for 10 years to build the ecosystem they want to make money in. Like, if we see Paytm, they have worked hard for really like 10 to 12 years, and they are now at the position where they are. But if we see recent payment apps like BharatPay, it has just been in, it has just started and it has reached a unicorn valuation. Similarly, we can see for Grofers. Like, Grofers, I have seen working from 2015, and they have built an ecosystem where they can take customers in and make money out of it. But now we have seen Zepto popping in and just making money out of it. Like, they have also reached unicorn valuation. Like, how do you see this point? Like, once a startup comes in, they focus on creating an ecosystem for like many years. They build an ecosystem, and then competitors come in and they all share the market.
See, I'll tell you, the different ways to look at this whole thing, right? One of the ways is, one, there's no right or no wrong way in entrepreneurship, right? Everybody, some people say that, raising those high valuations are like a bubble and so on and so forth, right? But then if you look at this whole thing, right, the valuation game, it's like, you pick up, let's say, Bitcoin at $10,000, and then it goes up to $50,000, right? That is how the investors make money out of it, right? And it's now, let's say, when the Bitcoin is at $10,000, right? I'm just trying to explain you in layman terms, right? And let's say you have Elon Musk coming and tweeting about it and putting in money in that as well. So it may go to $100,000 or $200,000 as well, right? So my perspective here is, sometimes all these influencers that are coming in now, when I talk about influencers, they are these super angels and super accelerators like Y Combinator, and you have all these super angels like Kunal Shahs and all those guys who are like tier one guys. And if you're able to have those, attract that capital, you can quickly scale things which are really not possible otherwise, right? But then it comes at a cost, right? uh, Valuation doesn't really mean, you have money in the bank account. uh, for the founder still withdraws that salary, and he has that vesting period for like 4 or 5 years, where then he'll be able to sell his stake in the company, or depending upon all the term sheets he had with the investors, right? So when all these, so it's like they went from top to bottom. The 10 minutes delivery guy that you're talking about, right? They went from top to bottom, right? They had the best of the investors on board, so it really helps. And I'm not saying that and they had the capital, and now they're creating the ecosystem, right? So that's another way. For example, if Tata launches a new product now, they'll go from top to bottom. They'll just put in like 1000 crores, and so when you have that kind of capital, you can build the ecosystem and you can learn over time, right? So that is how it is. And for the investors, the benefit is, the investors that invested in the first stage, let's say the Y Combinator invested at, maybe at X valuation, and the other investors put in more money at, let's say 10X valuation, the Y Combinator's valuation increases, right? The net worth of Y Combinator stake increases, right? And hence, this is like a game of how the shares work. And in even the public markets, it's very much related to the emotions. It has the quantitative qualitative analysis, right? So that is how I see it, right? If you look at from the business point of view, I have no data about how they've been doing in business, what are their revenues and etc. So I'm not able to, I won't be able to tell you about that, but I'm just giving you the fundamentals, how this whole thing is working, right? And why is it working like that? And why Bharat Pay and why other guys? Bharat Pay's founder had a strong credibility. Look at his profile, right? He had
Yeah, he's from IIT Delhi itself.
IIT Delhi, and then no, he's not just the university, but then he worked at very senior positions. He knows how to, build teams, build products, scale teams, scale products, build distribution channels, and scale distribution channels. If you
Yeah.
have that competency to build, and then to build a product, and then to scale, put it out in a distribution channel and scale it, I think nothing's better than that.
And sir, like how can we gain experience in college itself? Like if we want to go big into the startups.
See, there are a lot of different ways you can do that. I was part of the Microsoft Accelerator when I was a student in the investment team, right? So that is one of the ways you can do that. Be a part of accelerators and incubators in the investment teams, right? That is how you would understand from top to bottom, right? And that gives you a quick boost, right? The second is, I'll say, be a part of the incubator, intern with an incubator accelerator. Second is intern with a startup, at a seed stage startup, Series A startup, and Series B startup. Maybe let's say a startup which has IPO'd, right? You see the difference in the culture and how they're performing, right? And if you're able to do all these three, four, you've been in the VC side, you've been in the entrepreneur side, I think you'll get a lot of exposure of how do you run the startups, right? And then keep on hustling, keep starting, right? Uh, Before I hit my six figures, right, I had like couple of startups which actually failed, right? And it's completely okay to do that, right? And but the point is, if you have that passion, you keep on persevering, right? You have that passion, you have that vision. Okay, I'll do that. You're confident, then you'll make it anyways.
Okay, sir. Thank you for the insight.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time, and we're very happy to be associated with you guys. And if you have any questions, you can text me on WhatsApp or on the group. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
for all the attendees out there, we have floated a feedback form where you will fill out your details and we will also send you the certificates for attending the session. And sir, thank you for your time. Apart from some immature behavior from some, it was a very good session and insightful.
That's fine. That's completely okay. So, ठीक है guys. Okay. Bye.
Bye, sir.